Hello, everyone, and welcome to a remarkable game from round 2 of this year's Sinquefield Cup. It is world champion Gukesh versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Both of them had a really bad start to the tournament. They lost their games. Gukesh lost that brilliancy to Pragnananda, and Nodirbek lost that hard-fought game against Levon Aronyan. And now they get to face each other sort of as a consolation prize. Whoever loses will have a very difficult tournament. Whoever wins could bounce back and still have a great tournament. And before we check out the game, for those of you who haven't watched the live coverage, I would just like to, in short, tell you about the story that Yasser Serevan said during the live stream, because it is possibly the first great chess joke, sort of story joke that I've ever heard. And I didn't even know that it was a joke when he started talking about it. I thought it was, some piece of history. I wasn't really following all that much, so I just heard him talking, and then I started listening. But the point being is that he talked about smoking cigars at chess tournaments, and then he, said, okay, when I was still playing, and then he referenced Mikhail Tal, how he would inhale a cigarette, and then he would just hold it in forever, and then you were waiting for him to make a move, but the smoke wasn't coming out, and then it took him like forever to exhale the smoke. And then I have no idea, for some reason he talked about cigars at tournaments and how it was allowed some 30 years ago, but nowadays it's not allowed anywhere. And he said that former world champion, or rather second world champion, Emmanuel Lasker, used to smoke Cuban cigars, but the really, really bad ones that smelled horrible. And then everyone was always really annoyed by this. So when there was a tournament, players chipped in and they bought him a box of very nice cigars. And they said, okay, smoke these, when you're playing in the tournament, so it doesn't smell terrible for the rest of us. And during a game between Lasker and Aron Nimzovic, Lasker brought the old smelly cigarettes with him. Or cigars, and Nimzovic was very upset, and he went to the arbiter to complain about Lasker's smelly Cuban cigars. And the arbiter came to Lasker and he said, what's the deal, Emmanuel? Why are you not smoking the new fancy ones that don't smell bad? And Lasker said, well, why is Nimzovic even complaining? I only brought it. I haven't even smoked it. And then Nimzovic said his famous quote above the board, but the threat is stronger than the execution. And I don't know if it's that funny, but I actually thought that he was, talking about a real story and, part of chess lore or chess history. And then I realized it was a joke, and I almost fell out of my chair. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I thought it was hilarious. Let's get straight into the game. Gukesh with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Nodirbek, and they play a fairly known line. That is knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, a6, Morphy's defense to the white's Ruy Lopez. Bishop to e4, we have knight to f6, and castle's king side. We have knight captures on e4, and pawn to d4. Again, all been played before, nothing new here. Pawn to b5, bishop to b3, pawn to d5, d captures on e5, and bishop to e6. Again, thousands and thousands of games in the database, nothing new being played here. Knight b to d2 and knight to c5 now, putting pressure on the bishop on b3. And pawn to c3, where black usually continues with bishop to e7. You can also capture on b3. There's nothing wrong with that. But bishop to e7 is more common. However, here Nodirbek goes for pawn to d4, a bit of a more forcing line, if you will. Bishop to c2, or you could also capture. Knight to g5 is also a very well-known move. But here we have, after this d4 move, bishop to c2, pawn to d3, bishop to b1, and now queen to d5. Okay, nicely centralizing the queen. We have rook to e1 and castle's queen side. And now there are some games where knight to b3 was played. Also, rook to e3 is a known move, putting pressure on the d3 pawn. But here we have knight to g5, and it is now, as of move 14, that we have a completely new game. The knight on f3 was defending the pawn on e5. So currently the pawn on e5 e5 is up for grabs. The question is, will Nodirbek capture it? And as you can see by the situation on the clock, Gukesh is only gaining time, so he blitzed out everything up to this point, gaining 5 minutes on the clock. Nodirbek spent a little bit of time, but he plays knight captures on e5, spending some 4 minutes, deciding that, yeah, this is nothing special. Probably has it within his preparation, just needs to recollect. And Gukesh strikes with pawn to a4, again playing instantly, and we have bishop to d6. The first really big thing of the game, taking Nodirbek some 11 minutes to make the move, and Gukesh said that he thought that this was perhaps a mistake when he played it. And he played a captures on b5, a captures and bishop to a2. Now nicely connecting with the queen and the light square. Bishop on e6, knight to c4, and pawn to b4 now, chasing away the knight. Knight to d7 and bishop captures on c4. We have b captures on c4 now, attacking the knight on g5, but Gukesh takes care of it, not by capturing on e6, but rather he goes rook to a5, attacking the queen and queen to c6. And now it certainly seems like you could capture on e6, and you definitely should. For example, captures, but now not rook captures on e6, because that falls to bishop captures on h2 check, and then you pick up the rook. Instead, you play queen g4, and you attack the g7 pawn, less relevant, but you attack the e6 pawn, and you attack the c4 pawn, and this will give white sort of a long edge throughout the game. But after queen c6, we have knight d to f3 by Gukesh, and now just bishop to d5, and it seems like there's no more edge here for white, and Nodirbek just has a passed pawn on d3. So can Gukesh do some damage along the a file, as if he can get his queen, let's say, to a1, play rook to a8 somehow, could be very good for him. So here we have knight to d4, attacking the queen, queen b7, bishop to e3, making room for queen a1, and now just pawn to h6, chasing away the knight, knight g back to f3, and knight to b6 will come in very handy, adding more support to guard the a8 square. But now you might have to worry about some moves like queen a1, rook to a7. But Gukesh does not go for queen to a1. Instead, he goes for knight to d2. And now, well, you could really gain some initiative here by going rook h to e8. And it's not easy to make a move here. Point being that now queen to a1, you play bishop e5. And you have many threats here, because after, let's say, rook a7 and queen to b8, you have some pressure here. If captures, then if you capture with the bishop, then you capture the rook on e1, then queen captures, you might blunder the rook on a7. And if you go something like knight d to f3, okay, just bishop f6, and black is very solid here. White doesn't really have anything to do on the queen side. But after knight d2, Nodirbek played pawn to h6. Played fairly quickly, some 2 minutes for this move. Gukesh strikes immediately with knight to b5. We have bishop to c6, attacking the knight. King to b8, also very much a useful move. But bishop to c6, and now Gukesh goes knight to a7 with check. Also interesting is knight captures on d6. Point being that after rook captures, you can capture on h5. And now if rook captures, queen captures, you have some very nasty threats on the back rank. And you don't even get the capture on g2. If you capture on g2, then just bishop f4. And that's it. The rook doesn't really have any good squares. And you also have to worry about queen g4 check, picking up the bishop on g2. The rook is coming to e8. So this would be winning for white. But after bishop to c6, Gukesh played knight to a7 with check, king to b8, and he gobbles up the very strong bishop on c6. Also comes with check, queen captures on c6, and knight to f3. We have rook h to e8 now, and knight to d4. We have queen to e4 and pawn to b5 by Gukesh. And now the situation on the clock is not pleasant. Gukesh 16 minutes and Nodirbek 26 minutes. He goes king to b7, spends some 7 minutes on this move. We have knight to c6, now with some ideas of rook to a7 check. And we have queen to d5, saying, okay, this check doesn't really do all that much. And indeed, it doesn't. If you go rook a7 check, king to c8, there's not a lot you have here. So instead, we have knight captures on d8 with check. Going for the line that I've shown is maybe even better in terms of pushing for the win. But okay, also situation on the clock. So knight captures on d8 check. Rook captures, and now queen to a1, and just king to b8 by Nodirbek. We have queen to a2, and rook to e8. Now, again, putting a lot of pressure on that bishop, because if it moves, then the rook on e1 falls, and it's not easy for Gukesh to make a move here. He plays queen back to d2, stopping the d-pawn from marching forward, and rook to e4 now. We have rook a back to a1, and here, there are a couple of moves you could play. For example, bishop c5, and Nodirbek has nothing to worry about. Now there's, some pressure on the bishop here. And if you capture, then you just trade everything. Rook captures, queen captures, you're going to capture on c5. And that d pawn is very, very annoying. If you give a check, king b7, nothing really happening here. The knight here prevents any queen to a8 action. So yeah, this would be, although objectively a draw, I mean, the passed d-pawn is just obnoxiously strong. So after rook 8 to a1, Nodirbek did not go bishop to c5 or queen to e5, which is also fine, or rook to e6, that's also fine. He played pawn to h4, and now Gukesh's position is just winning. But what is the problem with this? So have at it. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Gukesh while I give you a couple of seconds. Gukesh found it, or sort of found it halfway. He played bishop captures on b6, which, of course, is the move to play. C captures on b6, and now rook captures on e4. Queen captures on e4, and now he played queen to a2, which is nice, but queen to e1 is even nicer. As you can't really allow queen to e8 with check, because, well, then you just get checkmated. So you would have to capture, and then after captures, you have this position, which, of course, is a completely winning endgame. Yes, you still have the passed d-pawn to worry about, but it queens on a light square, and Nodirbek has a dark square bishop, so you never really have to worry about that d1 square. So instead, after queen captures, we have queen to a2 by Gukesh going after queen a7. And we have king to c8 by Nodirbek. Queen to a6 with check going after the b pawn, and you can't really defend with this because then the queen just comes to a7. So here, king to d7, queen captures on b6, and now queen to e5, pressuring the h2 pawn. Queen to c6 with check first, king to e7, and now just pawn to g3. And what can Nodirbek do here? He's down in exchange. He does have some pressure, but can he do anything about it? We have pawn to d2, and just queen captures on c4. The problem is, it's a light square. And queen to e1 check looks very nasty, but no problem. Just queen to f1. You block check, and that's it. Queen back to e5, and rook to d1. Next, it's time to eliminate the d-pawn. H captures, we have H captures and bishop c5 going after queen to g3 check as the f-pawn is pinned. Gukesh says, no problem, rook captures on d2, now threatening rook to e2 to win the black queen. So queen captures on g3 check, and here Gukesh just played queen to g2, and he was in this position on move 50 that Nodirbek Abdusattorov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If you trade queens, then of course the endgame is now completely winning. You're up a pawn, you're up an exchange. And if you don't trade queens, you could, let's say, go queen to e5, then just a nice queen d5. You try to force a queen trade, and after, let's say, queen to c7, you go rook to e2 check, king f6, queen to f3 with check, king to g5, and queen to c6. And now you have successfully forced the queen trade. Otherwise, you're going to lose the bishop on c5. And now queen g3 does not work, as there is queen g2 with a forced queen trade. So you would have to trade captures, and again, a rook versus bishop, and you're up an extra pawn is completely winning for Gukesh. So yeah, tough first round game for Gukesh against Praggnanandhaa. Praggnanandhaa really played a brilliant game. Gukesh was basically playing against an engine, and that's impossible to play. Sometimes these players have a game where they just make every move count. That was Praggnanandhaa versus Gukesh. He lost that, but now he takes it out on Nodirbek, winning a very nice game. It was, going back and forth, but in time trouble, Gukesh just made it happen, and he could still have a very, very good tournament. Nodirbek, on the other hand, starting with 2 losses, has to, do quite a lot. Still, with 2 wins, it's like you've had 4 draws, so, he could still have a very nice event. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Brilliant stuff by Gukesh. Sorry for a bit of a longer video, but I really thought I should include that story, as I know not everyone watches the live coverage. But yeah, Yasser, I mean, what a legend! Just proving once again that he's amongst the greatest commentators in the world, just pulling it off deadpan like that. Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Gerhard Henkelmann, Derek King, Hernan Escalante Jr., Robert Kiefer, and Edmund Freeman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.